Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry. Just want to welcome everyone to this week's uh, webinar, Stopping the Violence in America. It's October 19th. I haven't been on for the last maybe 2 or 3 weeks. I've been away traveling, and because of the internet situation where I was in certain spots in Africa, I would be constantly falling off. And then last week, I was here, but we had a little technical difficulty. But we're back. I'm glad to be back, and I've heard that subsequent other past, discussions on the drug abuse and all of that went well, and it contributed a lot to this most auspicious and very important topic, which is dealing with violence in America. But the original purpose for this was also the inanimate object called guns play a very huge role in the execution, if you will, the perpetuation of violence in America. But we've had several wonderful speakers. And then one thing good about this webinar, it has allowed us to see how we can begin to reduce violence in America from several different important angles, from family to law enforcement to education, and through various other avenues, advocacies, people out there in the community, really looking at the different areas in which helps create platforms for people to be violent. And so as we are continuing on that path to look at the areas of routes, if you will, to reduce the violence, especially in America, which plays a crucial role in influencing the whole world. So today, I am pleased to have a very good friend of mine. I just can't help but to say it, but he just reminds me if he was my own son. I just love him. And his name is Bishop Leon Benjamin. I love him to death. He just has a special place in my heart, no matter what. And he and I also have worked together that we feel in past events and in past programs that we tried to start, what delves into violence, and violence many times delves into different strategic communities out there, and some avenues we were taking to help reduce violence or reduce the poverty or the situation in our community, so that we can also reduce violence. And let me just give you a little background of my brother, Bishop Leon Benjamin. I'd just like to read. He's a native of Richmond, Virginia, and has lived in Richmond for all of his life with his family, his wife, his beautiful wife, for 31 years. He has 3 grown children. He attended UVA and Virginia Union University. He is also a Navy combat veteran, where he served on the John F. Kennedy aircraft carrier during Desert Shield storm. It was during this time in his overseas commission that he gave his life to Christ. And he has been a pastor for 20 years and is the senior pastor and bishop of a New Life Harvest Church in Richmond, Virginia, and the senior pastor of the Remnant Church in Tulsa, Oklahoma. He is now running for Congress for Virginia, the 4th district. He has impressive history and an impressive experience, and I'm just glad to have him on. And he has a very unique topic that he would like to stress in the area of battling, if you will, against violence. And his title is Unity Amongst the Cultures for a Common Cause. against violence. Bishop Leon, it's always a pleasure to see you, and thank you for coming on.
God bless you, Reverend Oliver. Thank you for having me. And this is definitely a crucial time that we're in right now, and to be able to come to the table with solutions that would not only eradicate certain of our issues, but prolong the prosperity and all the things that the benefits of being who we are here in the United States of America, even abroad. I think everything is kind of like a domino effect. If it happens in one area, it could affect everywhere else. Problems and trouble is not just, so to speak, contained just in one little area. It can spread everywhere.
Yes, sir. Go right ahead.
You want me to just go ahead? Well, look,
yes, sir.
I want to welcome everyone and thank everyone for being a part of this. Reverend Oliver, as he has said so eloquently, thank you for that wonderful introduction. Just sharing the idea of culture, understanding the position that we have, and I'm going to just be very deliberate in saying that if we can't understand each other, then we will continue to have violence. It's something where it comes through an understanding of the individual, of the group, the whole thing about where, and as a pastor of 20 years, where do these wars come from? Where does the violence come from? Well, my Bible teaches me it comes from within. In the book of James, it talks about the fighting that comes from our members, talking about the human, the mind, the soul, these things that come at us. We are to control them from within and not from without. And so the idea, and talking to Reverend Oliver about cultures coming together for a common cause, it means all of us coming together on a level playing field where we can look at each other regardless of where we come from. And I'm just going to say it so we can all get the elephant out in the middle of the room and stop looking at it. No matter what color you are, black, white, red, yellow, brown, doesn't matter what you are. We are all one race, one human race, but we are also divided by the glory of God, of course, into diversity. Diversity should not impact our unity. As a matter of fact, diversity should complement our unity. The variety, I think God is a God of variety. If he made us all, if everybody looked like me, it'll be terrible if everybody looked like me. But going deeper into the diversity and variety of God's glory, the human race has always had to deal with violence. My God, the first crime happened in the Garden of Eden. Nobody shed any blood. The day that Adam and Eve ate of the fruit, they died, and there was no bloodshed. I would say this with illumination, that there was bloodshed, but that was before that blood was shed in that first family with Cain and Abel. It was the blood of Christ. But here we find out that the cleansing effect of commonality, the cleansing effect. I want to talk about how we come to a residual of when we touch and agree as a culture or cultures across the board, and we begin to identify intrinsically the differences without breaking up our unity. It can cause a what I call harmonization of cultures. And when there's disharmony, it means I don't like you because of the way you do things. I don't like because of your color of your skin. I don't like you because of what you eat. I don't like you because of how you worship. I don't like you. It can go on where we disassemble ourselves and we disfragment ourselves because our cultures do not want to identify not the variety, but the real core of why we are all together in the first place. We came together. God created us, according to his word, to be fruitful and to multiply, to replenish the earth. I mean, you're talking about spread this thing. This thing was supposed to be spread everywhere. Humans. I mean, thank God for the roaches. I'm just being real. Thank God for the frogs and the flies. And I'm saying all the animals, every creeping thing, the birds, the whales and the fishes. But God's greatest glory was for humans to spread all over this planet and to rule and to dominate. When there is discord, when there is frustration in our cultures, we begin to identify the lack, the voidness, and sometimes I just have to say it. We only identify the things that we think that other culture should have when we are already intrinsically made to give our very best. Every person on this video today was made to give your very best. Nothing less than your best we were created for. And when we don't give our best, the solutions become diluted or at worst, polluted. I believe that violence is a degrading or a devaluing of what we should be giving out all the time. When we lower our standards, when we lower our expectations and fall into prey, and I'm not talking about praying, P-R-A-Y, I'm talking about P-R-E-Y, when we fall under the consumption of our own lust and perversions and all of those things that bring disintegration to the human value, crime emerges out of that. When I look at another person and I begin to devalue them because of whether it be the color of their skin or whether it be what nation they was born in, or whether their economic status, their educational status, all of those things, and I don't appreciate, especially from my background. I mean, I grew up in the hood. I'm just being real today. I didn't know what poor was. I thought, it was never told me that I was poor. I just grew up and loved my family, loved my mama and my daddy, and loved my cousins and relatives, and then those I would meet in the neighborhood. I just thought we were supposed to get together until one time, I got in a fight real young. I was in Canada, Reverend Oliver, and I was on a swim team, and the guy just comes. I don't know why he didn't like me, but I just want to enjoy my summer and go swimming, and he punches me in my stomach. Thank God my cousin was there to kind of moderate this disagreement and also to make sure he didn't clobber me because I was not ready for the fight. Now, here's where violence really takes over a culture or variety of cultures: when people are not set to defend themselves, when people are not promoted to defend themselves, then violence can overtake an entire culture, an entire community, an entire whole system. Let's just say an entire nation. When we're not ready to defend ourselves. I heard that Reverend Oliver mentioned guns. That some people say we should get rid of our guns. Well, I don't know about that. Because if we make laws to only get rid of an inanimate thing, when the real issue came from a non-inanimate thing, came from actually from the discourse of inner thoughts, inner views. See, your inner view determines your outer do. So if we get rid of the inanimate object and still let that joker run around this planet thinking that he's okay without correction, without exhortation, without rebuke or reproof, then we're still going to have the problem. I believe that culture, defining culture, and really getting involved. And I'm going to give you this definition that I had down, and I like definitions. and I want to define it. And let me know how my time is, Reverend Oliver. But I want to give you this definition of culture so that we can understand. It says here, and this is just Webster's definition, the arts and other manifestations of human intellectual achievement regarded collectively. So I'm going to say it again. Culture is the arts and other manifestations of human intellectual achievement regarded collectively. In other words, a culture may start with an individual, but the design is to draw a kind of mosaic, a picture of who those people really are. And when we start to celebrate individual success and combine it collectively, it defines the culture. Now, I'm going to go a little bit Greek on you, a little bit when we talk about what makes things normal in a nation, what makes things normal in a community. It is when a culture establishes itself to do what is called norms or things all the time. We get the word nomos, the word law. So you could imagine what becomes normal in a culture turns into law. The Bible talks about even how the Jews who may have gotten the law, the 10 Commandments, they got the law from God, but then the Gentiles didn't have law, but because of what they did normally all the time, became a law unto itself. So cultures can, hear me, can shift a nation subjectively because of what they do all the time, for the good or for the bad. I'm just saying, cultures can shift a nation, a community. It doesn't matter. Let's go real small. How about a business? You can have a subculture in your business, and here's the CEO thinking everybody's happy. I'm giving them, good wages. I'm making sure they have good benefits. And you got a little subculture thing going on where they're saying, we don't like what we're doing. And the boss never finds out about it until kaboom, it explodes in such a way that it can no longer be hidden. This is what we're supposed to be celebrating. See, if we hide the achievements of our cultures, I'm just going across the board, wherever you come from. If we hide them, don't celebrate individuality, don't celebrate achievements. When we talk about the arts, we're talking about the part of your intellect that comes from the what? The right side or the left side? From the right side of the brain, the creative part, the imagination, all those things that if those things were not there, then somebody didn't think it. So you think things into what is called manifestation. This is what culture can do. It doesn't have to exist. I mean, I'm pretty sure that before guys like, let's say Edison, how about that guy? They say he invented electricity, right? Or Ford, Henry Ford. We say he created the automobile. No, his culture, his artistic, intellectual, as Robert Kiyosaki would say, your intellectual property, sometimes you have to protect. His artistic ability to see something that was not there is now manifest. This is the power of culture. We can create things that are not really appearing on the earth. Cultures, through their intellectual arts and imaginations, can create things. Now, what happens when we create things from our culture that become destructive? And I think I want to lay the groundwork for why violence, we try to solve it by taking away things from people instead of changing the culture of the people, to construct new infrastructures, new dynamics, a way of thinking. What if the way the culture is thinking is prone to try to put or subdue another culture? We were never made like that. Remember, He made us male and female. He told us all to have dominion. So me putting my foot on Reverend Oliver's neck is not going to work at all. Or you putting your foot on my neck. Somebody is going to be in trouble. We were never meant to do that. But what if it's normal? What if in a culture it becomes normal to be predisposed to dominate another culture? Well, I don't like you. I don't like this. I don't want, and that's where the violence emerges. I'm just talking from this place because I'm seeing some comments there. I'm seeing comments. Also relevant is a scientific understanding of the brain. Two important components are the amygdala, okay, which is like the instinct or animal mind, and there is the prefrontal cortex, which is the conscious mind. The relationship between the two is comparable to the religious expression, but it is important for explaining to non-religious people how people are raised from birth affects the adult thinking. Any comments? Well, let's just say it like this. We were made in the image of God, which, okay, in that image and likeness, there is a reality of full potential. The potential of every person is set in place. When there are defects, or we say affects, like let's say a trauma, a child sees murder all in his community, okay? All right, even though little Johnny is probably a good person, but his environment is terrible. he was made to be successful, but because of his environment, he's had some type of trauma. I have seen this where a person can change if you change their environment. A person can do better. They can prevail. They can excel if we change their environment. Now, notice I didn't say change the color of your skin or change your culture. You don't have to change your you don't have to change your culture to change your environment. You have to change what has impacted your culture. Negative things can impact your culture to get you to redirect the potentiality that God has already placed in every human being. And I believe we have an opportunity to reconstruct some things. Now, in the church realm, we call that revival, okay, in the religious realm. But in the scientific realm, if you want to say it in the manufacturing realm, we have to put together what we call borders. We have to put a construct in place where we can identify the proclivity to redirect our best into what we say. Sometimes you end up doing, as Paul says, the thing that I would do, I cannot do. When I want to do good, evil is present. And that which I hate, that is what I do. Oh, wretched man that I am, who shall deliver me from this body of death? The culture can be surrounded by death. The culture, but so you have to change the construct, the parameters of what has been impacting that culture. Let's, for example, say it like this. What if, like in a community that was very suffering with crime and criminal activity, puts together a neighborhood watch? I know it sounds crazy. And everybody just starts looking out for each other. Now we start reporting through video or text. So-and-so is driving down the street. We don't know who that is. we set up an online community communications where now we're seeing reports going on, so-and-so. And I remember back in the day, I don't know about you, Reverend Oliver, but everybody could whoop you. You remember that? Do you remember when everybody could whoop your tail? I mean, when you got home, Mr. John whooped you, the teacher whooped you. And by the time you got home, you were like, Mama, I'm sorry. I'll do better. And we all helped each other. If we could put constructs and infrastructure back in place in certain places and redirect our limited potential back into now unlimited potential, we will see that it's just the little adjustments in our lives that make great things happen. A neighborhood watch? You mean just people calling each other, setting up a communication system, identifying strangers coming through their neighborhood could literally curtail events that don't have to happen? Let's go another place. I'm running for Congress in Virginia. Imagine what policies can do when it comes to violence. Imagine putting things in place where now, I'm not just talking about guns and background checks and all that kind of stuff. I'm talking about education stuff where we put in mentorship programs, where we have policy, where we can direct institutional funds. I call it the money follows the child. What if the money can get past the institution and get directly to the parent where they can begin to disseminate how their education is done for that child? What if they had the wherewithal to pull that child out of that environment and put them somewhere else more conducive for little Johnny or little Sally? Oh my God. But it was the policy. It was the policy, the construct that formed a border of protection around that family that had been impacted by their culture's norm. The norm was half the students in that community end up dropping out by 16. So the school is not really passing anybody because they're failing and the kids are dropping out of school and nobody's paying attention. But look what happens with all the dropouts. Now these people ain't got no jobs because they don't have no education. If they don't have no education, they don't have no money. And now they're knocking on your door, breaking into your car, and come on, and throwing bricks through your store window because we didn't want to form a construct of border protection around that educational system. And because we keep electing the same people who don't write policies that protect our communities, we're saying the guns, really? It ain't just the guns. It could be a policy shift. It could be literally how the money is distributed in a community. You know, some people will get together in some cultures and all stay in one place. I mean, stay in an apartment and save up money until somebody in that family can buy a house. I know some of y'all might not have heard of that before, but I grew up in a culture where we all stayed together in an apartment until everybody started prospering. And then one prospered after another, which changed the directile or the projectile of that whole entire community or that family. So Reverend Oliver, the whole thing about commonality, bringing together, and even how we relate to one another, whether it's white, black, Hispanic, how we come together and say, how can we build things stronger? You know, everybody talks about the Tower of Babel. Remember, they all came together to build something, but guess what? It was against God's God's way of doing it. So we had to scatter them and confuse their language so that they can spread out. Did he take away the potentiality? No, he stopped something that was even going to be even more dangerous. And divine intervention, some of us may not like this, but sometimes God has to stop some of our crazy thinking. God has to do some stuff sometimes to intervene in the affairs of man, because we sometimes go cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. We go crazy. And we have to understand, he doesn't take away our potentiality. He really redirects it if we allow him to. So Reverend Oliver, I'm going to stop right there. We can go on and on and on, but I love the fact that we are in a place right now. If we are going to get this thing right, we can come with our constructs, our infrastructures, our individualities, our science, as well as religiosity, and we can keep things for everybody safe, and we can curtail the violence when we understand each other. Back to you, man.
Give a round of applause. I really appreciate all that you were saying, and I think that what you were saying too really is very important. We have methodical approaches to curtailing the violence, like you said, neighborhood watch programs, and those different entities that are putting bandages on the problem. Okay. But yet again, what you're saying is we have to look at the whole picture, the community picture. And I think I was saying earlier that, you know, a lot of these communities are suffering from a lack of love. Nobody loves them. So therefore, they're victims of lack of love, and then they become perpetrators of, you know, violent behavior because they find no hope in life, you know. And so that hope develops in what I would say a subculture. And that subculture in itself develops its own norms. And those norms helps to desensitize them, the God in them, in their relationship with others. And then we will see violence. We will see the guns come out. We will see the insensitivity, inhumanity to man toward their own brother because they don't see it. But there has been no enculturation, as you said, of true education, the type of education that was needed for them to feel their self-worth and their real value. It's really a complicated situation, but I really appreciate the things that you were sharing. And I think it's the Reverend Bishop and myself were one of the first religious leaders to delve into and saw how important the religious community is to the opportunity zone. We led the way, literally, in this nation. And so as we were discussing, we began to look at what are those things that are needed within the construct of that community to impact the positive trajectory of those stakeholders in those communities. So when these developers come in and to gentrify these communities, that they will be a viable player in that process, but also a viable player in sustainability of their own neighborhoods that could coalesce with the development, if you will, you know, so they're match in development. So that means there are different educational projects. There's a variety of things to be discussed, Reverend Leon. And he has actually continued that process with a lot of faith leaders, political leaders, and social leaders for a couple of years now on a weekly call to discuss these particular avenues. So really grateful. Thank you again. I really love to hear my brother. And he shared. So this gives us a great opportunity for those. I know that Frank Brell had shared some things, but also I would like to open up the doors to others and to ask any questions. And while people are coming in to ask a question, I would like to say, Reverend Benjamin Bishop, is that we need to put, again, the things that you were saying and the other speakers that we had, and bring those hodgepodge of information into one central cultural sphere of change, you know, because they have each one has its place. And the problem is that you're doing this on this end, I'm doing that on that end, and we're doing this end, you know, we're making impact just in these little areas, but how do we bring all of this extraordinary information that does play a critical role in what we're discussing about reducing crime, you know, reducing ill behaviors within a community which contributes to crime together. And so what you were saying is like an umbrella of a thought process and understanding or construct in order to develop that and to bring into focus some of the necessary areas that we do need to look at in order to.
I want to say something about that, Reverend Oliver, because
yes,
there is a way, we call it incubators, right? Like when God told man to be fruitful and multiply, and everybody started having babies, it didn't stop the flow. You know, there's a way to incubate a process so that it doesn't stop the currency of what is normally or naturally going on in a community. We can incubate something, birth it, push it out, raise it, develop it, so it'll be there. We say just in the nick of time. I mean, but every person that was born here came in time, right? And you didn't slow down the currency or the flow or the fluidity of your community just because, you were being raised or incubated, and so we call them think tanks sometimes, whatever. But even a think tank should not stop the currency of community. We're all coming together to come up with these ideas. We still have to see the process of the currency or the fluidity of the community, even though while we're thinking up stuff. And we can do that. We can do incubation periods, all over this nation if we wanted to.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Anybody have anything to say, to share, any questions or to add on to this process? I wouldn't, no, let me, oh.
You got my vote.
Okay, is that Rodney? Did you want to say something? Just unmute.
I truly appreciate your insight. Deeply appreciate that. I remember as I was growing up, brothers growing up, this is a time when we were taught to hate ourselves because of the color of our skin. So unfortunately, this cancer, this attitude became internalized within families. And so we never had an opportunity to develop positive self-image or self-concept. And I remember how grateful I was when I joined the unification movement, because they taught us very deeply our true identity, our true self. Not that day in the society tried to give to it. So this is, one major solution to these issues is people to understand their true identity. That's what society lays on you, your original identity. You can transcend all the maliciousness and ignorance that you may encounter growing up in the inner city.
Amen.
That's the that development of that subculture that has become the norm. We're glorifying all kind of stuff, but it's a root cause of that from somewhere, and we like to deal with the root cause. Anybody else would like to share something? Please unmute. Okay, Reverend Franklin, I'm glad you volunteer your hand, because I was getting ready to volunteer you myself.
Well, thank you so much. Reverend Benjamin, thank you for those wonderful insights. And one of the things in which we have talked about in our group conversation with Reverend Oliver and some of you here on the call is the royal pushback, the heavenly God-inspired pushback that you are advocating, Reverend Benjamin. And that royal pushback is communication. The time is over for us to look at, especially in particular, me being, Black American, the time is done where we look at our troubled Black American youth and throw up our hands and say, oh, they're too far gone. We cannot allow ourselves to have this perspective with our young people without understanding, as you pointed out, as you said in so many words, finding out what exactly were the circumstances that led towards them making those choices in their lives. until society begins to have real authentic conversation with people who are in these troubled environments, that is going to be a historical phenomenon we will consistently not be able to go over. And so now is the time for us to have real conversations and then create positive, God-inspired actions based on that conversation with those people. Because that way we don't put, as Reverend Oliver said, this consistent Band-Aid. You can't heal this situation by throwing money at the circumstances. It has to be directed towards what they're really going through. And so that's our hope, that we will work together so that we may learn from your expertise, learn from each other's expertise, so we can get right to the root of the problem and come up with healing, positive possibilities. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That puts me in a mind frame of what Reverend Bishop said earlier, is that the money that they throw at are monies that builds the institution, but the monies should be following the parents or following what I would say, and Bishop has heard me say that, all that money is going to put more Band-Aid on the situation, but not focused on really penetrating the quagmire, if you will, of that subculture that promotes violence into God's sons and daughters who are still have the potential of being geniuses. So how do you take that money and focus that into that, opening that quagmire, and to say, okay, now I'm opening the doors to help the trajectory of your geniuses, you know? So that's what I hear Reverend Franklin said. And that's what something you said, as the educational programs are so important to facilitate that process. Thank you very much, Reverend Franklin, for that. Did you want to say something, Reverend Bishop, on that
I
as
want
well?
to say something about the purpose of elders. It sounds like a church thing, like I'm elder so-and-so, but it was really talking about people who watches over a city. The word is presbyteros, where we get the word overseer. An overseer is set in place. We sometimes say the office of a bishop. They were set in place in the community to be an example of family, practice, and enterprise. So, you know, husband and one wife, but then managing the house was practice, and then enterprise. Being able to have a good relationship with those who had and those who do not have. So we got the haves and the have-nots, but with the right elders in place, the have-nots do not disrespect those who have. And then those who have do not disrespect those who have not. So there's a coming together, we call it at the gate. At the gate, there's a coming together or an exchange now that we now learn to have what is called common wealth. That means everybody having access to the wealth. And that was the role of the elders in a city or in a community. It was to bring that divide, bring it together between the haves and the have-nots, those that are within and without, and forming those relationships without allowing, can I say it like this, the devil to take advantage of us.
Thank you very much. Okay, there was something put on there with Frank Bell talking about the division as a white American, of the white culture, the division between black and white. If you wanted to elaborate on that, Frank, you're more than happy to come on and share that as well, how you see that playing a role in this conversation. While he's thinking about that, anybody else would like to share some points with us?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes. I'm not saying I'm not white. I am, but I'm not from the United States, as you can probably tell by my accent. In fact, I'm from the other hemisphere. So, but just one story from someplace else, which is in New Zealand. My uncle, he in 1980, he passed on. He was old, to be expected. And this was a place out in the countryside. And there's no black people out there, but there are Polynesian people who are the people who were the first people to arrive in New Zealand. In fact, I was born in the location where the first Polynesians arrived in New Zealand. Anyway, after he passed on, before his coffin was taken to the little local church, the local Maori community asked if it could be taken to their marae, their community house. And there he was given a traditional tangi, which is a traditional, everybody's talking about him and the situations and experiences and so forth. And they gave him a traditional Maori funeral service. And at the end of the service, they put onto his coffin a kiwi feather cloak. Now, to me, I really impressed with that, because normally a kiwi feather cloak is only put on the coffin of someone who is a chief of a tribe, not an ordinary person. So that was a great honor that was given to my uncle. And then sometime later, even in their house, they have the pictures of the ancestors, and the picture of my uncle was there with them. So from that, I learned that they accepted him to be with their ancestors. So therefore, I myself have to accept their ancestors as if they were my own. So that is an experience from the countryside of New Zealand. And that's how I grew up, the kind of community I grew up with. I'm not saying the situations were perfect, but I don't hear about that sort of thing happening in this country. That's just my sort of where I'm from, and I hope things can get better here.
Well, thank you for that. Thank you. I think that, everything plays in a role. It goes back to what I always said, the lack of love that's in America toward us, toward each other. We can heal if we love. And the way that we can only love is as the bishop said, appreciate the unique diversity of each culture. Each one has its own beauty. And instead of seeing it as an enemy or a competition, we see it as a ability to harmonize and making things even beautiful and even better. That's what I got out of what you were saying today. And that plays a critical role in how people, manifest. I was a student, a psychology student, and people get split mind and this multiple personalities confused. And that is what is that? That split mind is people schizophrenia, and multiple personalities confused. What they call it, schizophrenia is really a split mind. Meaning the split mind is, according to that definition that I read, stems from a child raising in a community or in the parentages of contradiction. So it splits their minds. So in that split mind, they begin to occur different, different symptoms of paranoia and all that kind of stuff that comes with schizophrenia. And I thought that was very interesting because it was the lack of parental harmony, right, that caused the dysfunction in the child. And I think you were saying the same, the lack of our love and parental harmony that we have coming from our culture has contributed to a lot of dysfunctions that we do see in our society, which also contributes to violence. I think that's something of what you were sharing. Is this correct, Bishop?
Yeah, the term, we get the term family, but in the word family is familiar. And sometimes familiar is not always family. Just because it's my aunt, it don't mean I should leave my children with them because they might come back crazy. But so we the whole term about family was a place of protection, not a place of trauma. So the whole term family can become a contradiction if you have the wrong experiences. That's my family. Well, why does a person join a gang and say that's my family? Well, it takes a whole lot of trauma in a normal setting to drive a person to be even in a worse setting that now they call family. And it's worse than what they came from. And so in America or around this world, people calling stuff family, you need to check that out. You might be familiar with it because of your interaction, but it don't mean it's projecting you into a place of success. But families were meant for an incubation of success, not a place of continual trauma. And so I don't want to. Sometimes that's why God had to adopt us, because he know we came out of sin, a place of trauma, into a new family. So all of us been beat up some kind of way. and to be in that new community, how do we gauge and sympathize with each other to say, look, I've been there. And now let's put something together that all of us can participate in and make good use of it so that we can perpetuate that long-term sustainability, social impact, financial impact, physical impact, all of those things for long-term, so that when I'm buried, dead and gone, they'll put my picture up and say, Grandpa was awesome, or great grandpa, because he left something, or what we call legacy, right? Through his understanding of staying on his watch until the Lord called him home.
Yes. Amen. Thank you very much. Yes, well, just one last question, and I would like to, I just saw what Reverend Franklin shared, but I would like also, we can address that, and I think we were discussing a little bit, what ideas would you suggest that may serve as an incubation? That was from him, and then I would like to hear from the voice of the mother's voice, the voice of the woman, one person. I don't want to call out anybody. I don't want to call out Leslie Rigney or anybody, but anyone that would like to share, we would like to hear from you as well.
Okay, well, I've been working with Catherine Duncan, who lives in the West Side, which is basically historically the African American community. And what I noticed, and she's often mentioned it, there are these many big churches over there, but most of the people do not live in that community. And they moved out. So where are the elders? The elders are not there. They moved out. So this community is really suffering. it doesn't have the wisdom and the guidance there. It's like a wasteland. In fact, the homeless are moving in. So I guess my question would be how to set up more of a mentoring kind of program with the pastors, that they can stimulate their members to get more involved with the kids, in any way. May create sports, create, after school tutoring, anything. There has to, I don't think it's just going to happen by itself. I think there has to be some kind of push in that direction. And I'm not quite sure how that would happen. Perhaps Bishop Leon has some inspirations, I hope.
Well, I think it's a great question. It's a valid question. I mean, we have a daycare center that's now a learning center. Before and after school, we do virtual school. We got a lot of kids. We're working with the city through what is called a crime prevention program, where grants monies is now given to us to be able to put together collectively a mentorship program for these kids ages kind of like 12 to 15. And because the problem is not during school, it's when they get out of school. It's like there is no construct. There's no elders watching at the gate, like you say. And so being able to use that type of program, take the monies, and let's say let's go to Kings Dominion. I'm just giving an example, but then let's also go visit a nursing home. Let's show the kids that you got to learn how to serve others who are most vulnerable than you. Sometimes the mentality of these kids is that me, myself, and I, but you have to direct them into places where they get the opportunity to have the potential to serve someone else other than themselves. Because if you just take them to Kings Dominion, take them out to eat at Golden Corral, that's just me. We gotta put other things in there where we teach them the principle of serving. And it takes the elders, people, to oversee that, because kids by themselves, everybody saw that movie where all the kids on the island and they started making up the law. They eventually started killing each other. I forgot what that movie is called.
Lord of the Rings.
Lord of the Flies.
No, no.
Lord of the Flies.
Lord of the Flies.
Lord of the Flies.
Lord of the Flies. I was like, it was bound to happen. Somebody is about to get their head cut off by one of their peers. So you can't run a community peer to peer. You got to have somebody that you look up to. Here's the stages. You got to find somebody that you look up to, and then you got to find people that you look to, but you also got to find some people that look up to you. That's the full cycle, not just peer to peer, but you got to have that full cycle in that community, or as James said in his book, we're going to end up devouring each other. Got to have somebody to say, shut up and sit down somewhere. I remember my pastor told me to shut up and sit down. It's like, I'm 30-something years old. But I did. I had to shut up and sit down with my 33-year-old self. I had to have somebody I look up to. And in our communities, we don't have that type of who I look up to. We got people we look to, and Lord help us, we got people who are looking to us, and we don't have nobody we look up to.
Yes, thank you so much. What I wanted just to say as we close, one of the key words that you just said and the key points you said, and thank you so much, Leslie, for making that what they call it, analogy of the elders that have, because that, before my father died, I wanted to 2 points as we close. When my father died, he said that, on the same day he died, he said, if the church, with all that it has in the community, inside the church, the power that they manifest in the church, just released in that community that they're in, that Leslie was talking about. He said they will solve God's problem a long time ago. He went home, changed his clothes, and fell in the store, complete massive heart attack. Last words. Another thing was, thank you, Reverend Franklin. I was in one of these community centers. I walked in the church. It was a community center in one of these, at-risk neighborhoods. And I was waiting for the director to come out or something, I can't remember. And there was a billboard with all these little articles pinned on it. And I read this one article, and I always say this because it goes back to what you said, Bishop, as we close, about serving and how that changed the whole mindset of our young people looking up, looking down, and that whole principle, if you call, relationship that comes from God. And I read the article, and they did a survey. I just can't remember how many, but it was just, at a number, 10 girls, 20 girls all total, who were teenagers, who were sexually active. They took 10, right? And they gave them jobs. They took the other 10 and for about 30, 40 days, a couple months, and send them to service projects, going to elderly homes, serving other people, serving the elders for about, I believe it's like a 3-month period or something like that. The girls who got the jobs, their sexual activities never changed. The girls who were in service projects, 90% of them sexual activities changed. It reduced their sexual activities because it changed the whole mindset, the value concept in their hearts and in their minds. So that's really, I thought this is a powerful article, because you would think that, they got a job, they're going, but these girls, we ignited, Bishop, in them, the God in them, when you're serving. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you were discussing that, I felt I want to thank you. I didn't get to Vanessa. As we close, it's 3:04, but I see so many chat boxes. If Vanessa wants to say a couple of words, and then we'll allow Reverend Benjamin just to say 2 or 3 words, sentences as we close. Did Vanessa Burrows, she wanted to say something? No?
Oh, I'm sorry, I was muted. No, I don't need to say anything. I just wanted to share with everybody in the chat about El Sistema, which is has been a very successful program globally, and it's similar to what you are describing. It's just one avenue that I believe the Lord has used to reach underprivileged youth and maybe in various countries. It started in Venezuela, and it was so successful that it has gone global now. So at El Sistema, you've got a lot of private, different charitable organizations that are music. They're friends of El Sistema. It's a very large global organization now, and it really getting like kids in certain conditions, growing up in those cultural conditions you've been mentioning, gets them off the streets. It teaches them music. It's all run largely by volunteers, by donors, and it keeps them safe. And I volunteered for this with this program, and it's just wonderful to be able to work with the kids, to serve as a mentor. They all learn these same skills, mentorship, as they grow through the program. They learn teaching. They learn how to perform music in the public. They learn mentorship to the younger kids, and then they keep growing and advancing. And in fact, I just commented that the artistic director of the LA Philharmonic His name is Gustavo Dudamel. For those who may know him, he grew up through this system. So there is a lot of great talent and great success that I just have a heart for kids to be reached who may not otherwise have this, this is a resource. They have, kids may be hidden, they have great talents, but they can't be recognized or because of their circumstances. But here you have a resource. It's just something that I wanted to touch on briefly. Thank you.
You're muted. Reverend, you're muted.
Can you hear me? Anybody
Now
hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So I wanted to shout out to Dr. Madeline Alexander, who's always there. She's always had some great presentations and comments as well. Bishop Benjamin, this is Dr. Madeline. She's worked in the trenches. She's also a pastor in her own right as well. And we all have to get together sometime, but I wanted to introduce you to her. I don't know if you were on. I know that sometimes your schedule doesn't allow you to come in right away, but I don't know if you caught any of the presentation, Dr. Alexander, but you just want to welcome you and on.
Thank you. I did come in a little later, but I heard him express the concept of the incubators. And I really appreciate that because that allows so much growth and so many possibilities. And what it made me think about was the concept of an emporium. When you have an emporium, you have a marketplace, and that place could not only be for on the health aspect as far as food, produce, and things of that nature, but also to have the concept of the mind, body, soul, and spirit, to be able to have that under one roof, under one umbrella, like he said earlier, for therapeutic treatment, therapeutic guidance, and the opportunity to bring those together, those commonalities, to be able to lift up and raise up a people or up a business or up finances, like you were talking about in those incubation process. So I really appreciate you. I really appreciate the fact, Bishop, that you were able to be obedient and sit down and shut up. I appreciate that. Thank you for sharing that. That had more power than you can ever imagine. Leslie, thank you for your concept in this. I love the ideal every week to just be able to come on and brainstorm. And as we continue, these things will manifest because God is sitting up and he's hearing the plan and the process that we have, but he has a greater plan and process. And it's going to take all of us to pull it together and allow it to manifest. So thank you, Reverend Oliver, for your obedience, for your guidance, and for your leadership as we come together weekly. And everyone else that's on the line and that's involved.
Oh, thank you very much. Really appreciate those words. We're coming into our final conclusion, 10 minutes over, but I thought it was just worth it to go over it, especially now I can hear conclusive remarks from my dear good friend, Dr. Alexander, and also my dear good brother, Leon Benjamin, but he's still my son. I just love him. I love him. I don't know about you, but I always see similarities in his character to me, so he's a wonderful brother and we love you. I love you so much. Thank you for your insights. God will be with you because we need you on the platform of our political system as well. And so I want to thank everyone. Let us all really pray for this brother. He is standing up for values in his campaign. God's value, family values is one of his strongest components that he advocates within his campaigning there. So we want to continue to pray for you. God will, that door shall open, and we just pray it sooner than later. Everyone, thank you very much. Next week, we'll have a brother, Corey. He is from Safe Streets. and he will give his testimony of what he does in the Baltimore area, which Safe Street is probably around the United States, but in Baltimore area, some of the things he shared with me are just incredible. And so we look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you again, Bishop. And we will talk again.